Let me introduce you to a guy who got a second chance at life and decided to use it for violence. But not the fun kind, the desperate kind. His real name is Gray, but after everything he's been through, people are going to start calling him the Broken Blade Returner. You will understand why very soon. The story begins in a small village called Villa Ranabu. Gray was walking through town when a kid named Belder spotted him. Now Belder had a favorite hobby, challenging Gray to sword duels. Except these weren't real duels. They were excuses. Excuses to beat Gray up and humiliate him in front of everyone. Classy guy, right? But here is the thing. This time was different. This time, that humiliation was never going to happen again. Gray grabbed the sword. Belder did not wait for any signal. No warning, no ready set go. He just attacked. Cheap move, but expected. Here is where things get weird. Gray dodged every single swing. Every single one. With precision that made no sense for someone like him. Belder's sword cut nothing but air. The bully's face went pale. Something was seriously off. He could feel it. Then Gray closed his eyes. In the middle of a fight, eyes closed, waiting for an opening, like he had done this 1,000 times before. And with one move, he slapped the sword right out of Belder's hands. The audience went silent. Belder admitted he lost. But Gray was not done. He was not the coward anymore. He needed everyone to see that. So he brought the sword down hard. Don't worry, it was just a grazing hit. Gray is not the villain here. He just wanted to teach a lesson. Then he hit Belder again, this time with the flat side of the blade. The bully went flying. In everyone's eyes, especially Belder's, the coward kid from before now looked like the biggest threat in the room. The other boys thought 4 against 1 would fix things. Spoiler alert, it did not. All 4 of them ended up with ringing heads and bruised egos. Gray made his message clear. From now on, none of them would treat him like garbage. If they tried, they would end up like this leaf. He sliced a leaf clean in half, right in front of them. Belder ran off screaming about needing to change his underwear. I am not making that up. But here is the truth that none of those kids knew. Gray has a dark secret buried in his past. Or rather, buried in his future. 15 years from now, Gray would be part of a team assembled to face the greatest threat the world had ever seen, a destroying entity called the Liquidator. This thing erased an entire continent off the map, like someone wiping dust off a table. To fight it, the world brought together its strongest warriors, a man who survived a giant's attack without a single scratch, a sage with power equal to an entire army, an archer who took down a high-level dragon with 1 arrow, and the strongest swordswoman who ever lived. Every single one of them died. Gray watched them fall, one by one. He could not do anything. He was the low-ranked soldier, the disposable pawn, the name nobody remembered. But when everything seemed over, something happened. A power nobody could explain kept him alive. An entity called Kronos appeared and told him one simple thing. Gray's power was stronger than the Liquidator's own power. There was just one tiny problem. Gray had no idea how to control it. So he was thrown back into battle with a black sword covered in red lightning. He charged straight at the monster, something none of those legendary warriors could do. But it was not enough. The Liquidator stayed untouchable inside its own plane of power. Gray had no real control over the energy he was carrying. That is when Kronos stepped in for good. He sent the Liquidator back in time, and he threw Gray even further back. Far enough that Gray could learn from scratch everything he never learned, and this time do it right. Gray opened his eyes. He was in Villa Ranabu, 15 years before any of it happened, and right there, in those first moments back, he ran into Belder and his gang. You already know how that ended. 4 guys on the ground, begging for mercy. Gray put away his sword and looked at Belder. He had one simple request, a referral to the Shinsura dojo. He needed a path to the greatest academy in the world, and that humiliated bully right in front of him was the fastest door he had. Belder ran off to recommend him. Later in the city, Belder asked Gray why he wanted to go to the dojo so badly. Gray explained. He needed a recommendation for the academy. One of Belder's gang members laughed. He said Gray already seemed strong enough. Why bother with more training? Gray looked at him and said something that made everyone go quiet. His level of strength was far from ideal. Not even the world's greatest elite group could defeat the Liquidator. Even when he used his black swordsman power, he could not scratch that monster. He did not know how much stronger he needed to become, but he had clues, and he was determined to follow them. For a few seconds, he felt something. A dark power. Control. He focused on learning the sword art of the Holy Swordsman. If he had trained his sword skills more under the same conditions as that legendary fighter, the outcome would have been different. That is why Kronos sent him back. Belder's master was not happy. Sarah, the sword dojo instructor, heard that Belder attacked a civilian using the techniques she taught him. She was disappointed. Disappointed and angry. Belder tried to make excuses. It was not a fight, he said. It was training. Sarah hit him with her wooden sword. Hard. She told him to stop making excuses. Attacking an unarmed person was not training. She pointed her sword at him and told him to leave. Never come back. Then she looked at Belder's gang members and told them the same thing. None of them could call themselves students anymore. The quartet walked away defeated. Sarah turned to Gray and apologized. She heard he wanted a recommendation for the academy. As an apology for the trouble Belder caused, she offered to write the letter. But first, she needed to see what he could do. She handed him a wooden sword. He would get the first move. Gray attacked fast. Quick strikes. Sarah defended each one easily at first. But then she noticed something. His swordsmanship was incredibly practical for someone his age. He moved like he had been in real battles before. When he dodged one of her blows, she had proof. His style was almost entirely self-taught, but it looked similar to the academy sword style, like someone had shown him the basics, and he figured out the rest on his own. She realized he was a rough diamond, one that needed polishing. Gray kept attacking, rapid blows in sequence. Sarah found herself going all out. She wanted to defeat him and end the test, but he kept dodging, kept defending. Even under repeated attacks, he kept up with her movements and did not give in. She wondered why she was so scared of this child. Then Gray delivered a slash, filled with something dark, something wrong, malevolent energy. Sarah dodged. She felt a bad premonition in her gut. She saw his weakness and prepared to end the fight with her next swing, but her wooden sword blade shattered, completely destroyed. Gray felt the same sensation as before, the power of the time entity, Kronos. Then his body gave up. He fell to his knees, intense discomfort washing over him. His body could not handle that power level. He could barely stand, but he said he was fine. Lied right through his teeth. He decided not to use that power recklessly anymore, and he decided not to tell Sarah the truth. Even if he did, she probably would not believe him. So he changed the subject, said he got carried away. Sarah knew better. It was impossible to cut a blunt blade like that. She was sure Gray knew it too, and she was sure he was lying, but she let it go. He did not want to talk, and she was not going to force him. Back to business. The academy recommendation. Sarah said she could provide it. The Swordsmanship Academy was the best educational institution in the kingdom, but she could not recommend him there. He was not prepared for that environment. Gray felt the weight of those words. He did not have enough strength. He could barely accomplish anything, except when his power manifested randomly. Instead, Sarah suggested something else. The Unified World Academy. Not just the best academy in the kingdom, the most renowned institution in the entire world. Gray was shocked. That was the place where the Holy Swordsman and other heroes had emerged. He asked if he could really get in. Sarah said no, not with his current body. His body was far from conditioned to be a swordsman. At the Royal Academy, maybe he could compensate with skill, but at the Unified World Academy, impossible. She asked him how he got so much skill with such a fragile body. Gray knew the truth. Every student at that academy was a prodigy, and, with his current body, he did not come close to their level. But Sarah did not let him give up. There were 9 months left until the entrance exam. She admitted 9 months was not enough time, but she asked him to trust her anyway. Over the next 9 months, she would put him through rigorous training, real training, the kind that breaks most people. Gray accepted the challenge. Sarah smiled and said the torture would begin soon. Days passed. Gray ate like he had never eaten before. He trained like his life depended on it, because it did. He honed his sword skills. He strengthened his body. 8 months later, Gray looked like a completely different person. His physique was impressive, muscular, Strong. Nothing like the fragile boy who stumbled into the dojo. Sara looked at him and said she had nothing left to teach him. In this last month, he would take an exam in an unknown location. He should arrive early. She handed him enough money for the trip and for a month of supplies. Gray thought going a month early was too soon. He joked that she was trying to kick him out of the village. Sara said he was exaggerating, but then Gray mentioned something. An ogre nest near the village. Not many guards to handle it. Sara confirmed the nest existed, but help would come from the royal capital. He should go to the exam without worries. Gray knew she was lying. No help would come. He had seen this before. In the future, shortly before the village was destroyed, his master would lose her life. The stories would say she was massacred while facing an ogre alone. He thanked Sara and said he was leaving for the journey. Sara said she would pray for him to pass the exam. That night, Sara headed into the forest. She had discovered its location through scout reports. But from high up in a tree, Gray asked where she was going. She was shocked. He should have been on the road to the academy. Gray asked about the ogres. What happened to the royal capital's army? Sara lied. She said the army could not come because of an emergency. So she was going alone. She knew the nest's strength from the reports. The chief was an elite ogre. 45 monsters total. Even with the difficulties, she insisted she would succeed. Gray knew an elite ogre was not that strong by itself, but its true strength was its intelligence, its leadership. Fighting alone would be suicide. She would get surrounded and destroyed. He had already witnessed this future with his own eyes. So he insisted she take him on the mission. Sara refused, stubborn as always. Gray did not back down. He said she could not even beat him in training fights anymore. He would not be a hindrance. But Sara was worried. Real combat against a monster nest was dangerous. She wanted him to wait until he had more experience. Gray had an idea. A terrible, aggressive idea. He would fight Sara until she lost consciousness. Then he would deal with the ogres alone. He pointed his sword at his own master. Sara stared at him. Then she gave up. Fine. They would go together. But she made him promise. No matter what happened, he would return alive. Gray lowered his sword. He intended to do exactly that, but she had to promise too. She could not die either. On that dark night, they set off toward the ogre nest in the heart of the mountain. The terrain offered no escape routes. The ogres felt confident there. They could not flee, and dealing with intelligent monsters required extreme caution. They did not spot the ogre teeth. So, they decided to reduce the monster numbers before he came out. Sara gave Gray his mission. Eliminate the visible enemies on one side. She would take another path and take down the others. Weapons drawn, they advanced at half speed. The ogres barely had time to notice before they were struck. Many dropped before they could react. Then, a pack of enraged ogres charged. Gray pulled back his sword and delivered a spinning slash. Several enemies dropped at once. One ogre tried to land an axe blow. Gray cut its belly open. Sara was holding her own too. She eliminated several ogres without taking a single hit. They cleared the area of common ogres. Sara asked Gray if this was his first real combat. He did not answer. He just told her to stay alert. Something felt wrong. The monsters seemed too weak. His master could have handled them alone, honestly. Unless inside that tent was something truly horrifying. Gray looked at the tent. He saw terrifying red eyes staring back. He yelled at Sara to leave. Now. Get out of this place immediately. They ran, fast. An elite ogre appeared, destroying part of the camp behind them. Sara said it was an honor for the chief himself to come meet them. Gray shook his head. That was not the chief. The real one was right behind him. A deafening roar echoed through the mountain. The ogres went crazy, extremely furious. Gray recognized the monster. An ogre general, the true chief of the nest. Sara's face went pale. An ogre general was not something they could face alone. New plan. Take down the elite ogre first, then run. Sara defended an axe blow with her sword. She cut the elite ogre's chest. The wound healed immediately, right in front of them. Gray explained. The ogre general's roar increased strength and recovery speed for all its allies. That was why the ogres were so strong now. Even the weakest ones were not easy to defeat. Gray left his rear under Sara's protection. She just had to buy time. No need to defeat the elite ogre. He said there was only one choice now. Take down the ogre general once and for all. He charged into direct confrontation. The ogre general was smart. It tried to flank him, attack from behind. Gray had to dodge another orc while focusing on the enemies in front. Then his sword broke in half. The weapon could not handle the clash against a strengthened ogre. An attack came at him. He defended with just the hilt. The ogre understood his plan. That was why it was attacking so brutally. Its high intelligence was not just for show. Gray grabbed another sword, defended more axe blows. Sarah threw him another sword. Now he had two. Even with two swords, it was not enough. He was facing an ogre general, and anyone else who got in his way. The ogre general roared again. Its subordinates got even stronger. Gray used both swords to defend against heavy attacks. He pushed back an ogre's axe with his body strength, shoved one out of the way. Then he charged into a crowd of monsters. He attacked in a straight line, hit several enemies, but an attack hit his shoulder. No time to react. More blows landed as he advanced. Then an ogre grabbed him by the waist, immobilized him. Another monster prepared a fatal blow. The blow hit Gray's shoulder. The monsters were wearing down his swords, breaking them, throwing him off balance. An enraged monster tried to punch Gray's face. He defended with his sword. The blade shattered. Gray flew backward. Severe wounds from the impact and the previous cuts. He hit the ground with yet another destroyed sword. One sword to face a crowd of monsters and an ogre general. Because of the experience he gained before his regression, Gray knew something terrible. He could not win. Gray looked at his master and did the only thing he could think of. He told her to flee, run while the monsters were focused on him. Sarah laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh someone gives when they have no good options left. She apologized and said she could not do that. Gray insisted. She should not die there. She did not need to worry about him. She explained that it was not about worrying. She could not run because her leg was injured, a cut that made running impossible. So she had no choice. She had to fight. Gray had gone back in time to defeat the liquidator. Everything looked like it would end the same way. Another failure. Another loss. He delivered another attack. His last sword broke. Hopelessness washed over him. But he refused to accept it. The fight would not end like this. Not again. If he used the power of the Black Swordsman, he could win. By accessing that power, all his enemies would become weak. He knew it. So he closed his eyes. He reached back into his memory. Back to the moment he faced the liquidator. He concentrated on that feeling. That dark, uncontrollable power. Then he looked at his broken sword. When he opened his eyes again, shadows enveloped his body. He swung the broken blade. A magical slash erupted from it. The attack cut through a multitude of ogres lined up in front of him. They dropped like flies. Sarah did not seem to see the blow itself, but she noticed the result. Several monsters were just gone, defeated in an instant. Gray smiled as shadows consumed his body. He said everything was fine. He eliminated more orcs with another shadowy slash. The ogre general stood there, terrified. Then Gray delivered one more shadow attack. The general fell. Meanwhile, Sarah defended an axe attack from the elite ogre. She laughed and said the monster had given her some trouble. Then she cut it into several pieces. With the general dead, the strengthening effect ended. The remaining monsters became weak again. Gray had done it. He defeated the ogre general using his black swordsman form. He looked at Sarah and apologized for breaking her sword, for saving her life. Sarah said she did not care about the sword. She asked about the attack he used, the shadowy slash that came from nowhere. Gray did not answer, because he collapsed, hit the ground, unconscious. Sarah screamed for him to wake up, but the broken blade returner was already somewhere else. When Gray opened his eyes, he was in a dark place, unknown, empty. In front of him stood a door, wrapped in iron chains. Black and red energy pulsed around it. He recognized it immediately. His power. The power he had used before. He wondered if opening that door would give him the strength he wanted, the control he needed. He took one step forward. Then he felt it. A corpse-like presence behind him. A monster. He did not know why, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he opened that door right now, he would die. An entity spoke. It said Gray made a good choice by not opening the door at that moment. Then Gray woke up in a bed, desperate, sweating, confused. Sarah was right there, excited to see him open his eyes. She said he was in the village infirmary. He had been unconscious for 5 days. 5 days. She feared he would not wake up again. He had pushed his body so hard that it simply collapsed. She said her words did not do justice to what he had done. Defeating all those orcs and the general was insane. Then she asked if his body was okay. Could he move? Gray tried. His right arm would not cooperate. It trembled uncontrollably. He could move it with great effort, but he thought he would not be able to hold the sword anymore. There was also a bruise on his forearm, shaped like a shadow. He hoped Sarah could not see it. He told her he could not put strength into his right arm. Sarah explained that he had broken every bone in that arm. Every single one. It would take time to recover. He felt no pain, which was why he did not realize how bad it was. They had treated his arm with a magic potion. Gray could not believe it. Magic potions were incredibly expensive. Sarah said the village chief gave it to him as a gift. Gray asked why the village chief would give something so expensive to someone like him. Sarah smiled, because Gray was now the hero of that village. Before he could process that, the village chief walked into the infirmary. The man thanked Gray effusively, over and over. The ogre general was a monster, capable of destroying the entire village. No neighboring force would have come to help. If Gray had not eliminated that threat, the village would have been devastated. So the chief handed over the potion as recognition for Gray saving every citizen's life. Gray thought the chief was exaggerating. The chief assured him there was no exaggeration, and Gray knew the chief was right, because in the world before his regression, the village had been destroyed by those same ogres. The chief offered to explain more details. He also mentioned that he knew about the academy admission exam Gray wanted to take. Gray did the math. 2 days left until the exam. The World Union Academy was a 3-day walk from the village. He could make it in 1 day if he had a horse, but he had no money for that. So he asked the chief to lend him a horse. The chief had already prepared the best horse in the village. He had anticipated the request. Sarah commented that if Gray had not woken up on this last day, they would have taken him while he was still sleeping. Gray walked to the door and opened it. Every single villager was there, holding signs, wishing him good luck, thanking him for what he did, hoping he would pass the exam. One villager handed Gray a bag. The whole village had pulled money together so he could enroll at the World Union Academy. Gray was overwhelmed, happy. He thanked everyone and made a promise. He would not be able to return if he failed the exams. Sarah added that none of the academy candidates had ever defeated an ogre general, so he already had an edge. But Gray was worried about his right arm. The condition was bad. Sarah reassured him. His left arm was more than enough. He would not need to use that shadowy power. Gray was not so sure. The exam would not be lenient. It would probably require both arms. Sarah spoke with complete certainty. The academy examiners would notice his skill. He would pass. Gray thanked her. In the other reality, the village had been destroyed, but in this one, it was still standing. This made Gray realize something important. This world was no longer the same as before. Hope flickered inside him. The future could be changed. With the power he had acquired, he could rewrite everything. He set off on his journey to pass the exam. Thanks to the swift horse, Gray arrived quickly at the city where the exam would take place. Finally, he reached the World Union Academy. A giant castle stood before him, massive. The kind of place that made you feel small just by looking at it. He entered the premises. The distribution of exam tickets began immediately. Candidates were told to remain in the central arena until the process was complete. Gray looked around. So many people. He heard whispers that only 20 would pass. 20 out of hundreds. The candidates around him said the number changed every year. Last year, 50 people passed. Some years, only 1 person made it. A voice announced Professor Ariel. She would distribute the exam tickets. Everyone picked up the paper in front of them. They had to slide their fingers over it to generate magic. Gray picked up his paper. Candidate number 513, fencing course. Nothing else was written on it. Just the number and the course. The World Union Academy did not care about age, gender, or social status. Names did not matter either. Only results. Only those who passed and earned the right to cross the bridge would reveal their names. They could even use fake names if they wanted. It made no difference. Gray had left his sword at the inn. He hoped that would not be a problem. Professor Ariel assigned courses based on appearances. She asked anyone in the wrong course to raise their hands. Everyone was shocked. How could she assign courses just by looking at people? Had she already evaluated them somehow? Was she using mind-reading magic? No one raised their hands. The professor announced the exam schedules. Gray's exam would be at 11 o'clock on the very first day. He was not happy about that. He wanted more time for his arm to recover. He learned that the exam would be practical. Any delay would mean disqualification. Gray could not change the time, and he still had no strength in his right arm. He wished desperately for it to heal by the next day. The next morning, his arm had not recovered. He went to the exam anyway. A servant told him to wait at the arena entrance. He would be the next candidate. His left arm worked perfectly, but his right arm moved slowly, like it belonged to someone else. Gray used the waiting time to observe the examiner. He studied his future opponent, looked for openings, looked for weaknesses. A large brute charged at the examiner like a bull, a heavy sword, a heavy swing. The examiner wore glasses. He looked unimpressed. He dodged. The brute's sword hit the ground. The brute pulled it back up, declaring he was not finished. He launched another attack. The examiner defended with a thinner blade. The brute was shocked. His heavy sword should have shattered that little thing, but it did not. The examiner broke the brute's guard with raw strength. One blow sent the opponent's sword flying. Another blow knocked the brute to the ground. Exam over. Gray watched and felt hopeless. The examiner just defeated a much larger opponent, using only one arm. Then the examiner called candidate number 513. Gray had to face a man like that with one working arm. The examiner told Gray he could deliver the first blow. Gray did not think he had a chance, but he decided to give everything anyway. He advanced impetuously. He remembered Sarah's teaching. Do not swing the sword only with your arms. Channel the force from your entire body through them. Even with his right arm weakened, Gray transferred force through his other muscles. He delivered a quick cut. The examiner dodged. Gray could not fight in his usual manner. Swinging without full strength was harder than training ever prepared him for. His left arm prepared another strike. The examiner tried to take advantage of the opening, but his sword seemed too slow. Gray could predict the trajectory. He defended with ease. The instructor had power, but his speed did not compare to Sarah's. Trusting in the swordsmanship she had taught him, Gray believed he could compensate for the difference in arm strength. He attacked from the front, then advanced at high speed. The examiner's shock grew. He was slow. Gray had overestimated this man. He was not as strong as he seemed. Sarah's words echoed in Gray's mind. She had said he would certainly win the test. They engaged in a sword clash. Gray deflected the examiner's arm upward. He felt confident. He could really win this. But understanding the examiner's swordsmanship was one thing. Breaking his stance was another. The power difference was significant. Winning with only one hand was not easy. Then, Gray noticed something. The examiner's movements were becoming disorganized. Gray dodged a blow and planned his ending. He stood still, waiting. The instructor delivered a top-to-bottom sword strike. Wide, open, predictable. Gray dodged to the side. The strike left the instructor's back completely exposed. It did not matter how great the power difference was. Gray was behind the examiner now, a surprise attack ready to go. He prepared to deliver the final strike to the examiner's back. Then, the fight stopped. Gray thought it seemed early, but the announcement came. The exam's time limit had ended. The result was a draw. Gray looked down, sad, frustrated. He had prepared the final attack. Victory was right there, but he gave his best. He knew that. He decided to try again next year, when his arm was healed. He looked at the Grand Colosseum and thanked them for the opportunity. A week later, a meeting was held at the World Union Academy. An elderly man asked for opinions on the candidates. The exam was finished. Now came the decisions. The attendees agreed the joint observation method was efficient. Another member said they could not afford to ignore talent just to make the process easier. The elderly man interrupted. He did not want opinions on the exam system. He wanted opinions on the students. Starting with the swordsmanship course. Who passed? All who defeated the examiner were approved. The others were evaluated based on the quality they showed. Besides the winners, 3 other candidates stood out. Someone argued that even if others were admitted, they would not keep up with the classes. The focus should be on the most prominent candidates. No one objected. The approved candidates for the swordsmanship course were confirmed. Then Professor Ariel with the red hair asked about candidate number 513. The evaluators opened the video of Gray's fight. They smiled. They were certain the young man would have won. But the facts that he needed tricks to almost defeat the instructor raised doubts. He had technique, they admitted, but he lacked strength. From beginning to end, he seemed outmatched. They decided not to admit candidate number 513. Ariel said it was a waste. Even watching the exam together, they had all missed something important. The next day, all candidates gathered in front of the clock tower. Gray looked at his application form, waiting. The names of approved candidates for the swordsmanship course were announced. 6 candidates were approved. 5 names were read at once. None of them were Gray. Then the 6th name was read. Still not Gray. By the end of the day, the chosen applicants were expected to cross the bridge and finish their enrollment. Gray stood there, watching others walk away, watching his dream slip through his fingers.